G'day, welcome to Plugged In Australia, episode 56 for Monday the 18th of May 2026. Today we've got a bit of a big episode here. Subaru has priced its new Uncharted electric SUV for Australia and at the same time cut pricing on both the Solterra and the Trailseeker. BYD looks like it is preparing a serious expansion across SUVs, people movers and commercial vans with the Ti7, Atto 2 DMI, M9 and V9 all in the frame. Xpeng's X9 electric people mover is getting closer to launch. Renault has priced the Master E-Tech electric van. Mercedes-Benz has confirmed its electric CLA lineup for Australia. And we'll also look at Audi's possible compact EV, the Lexus TZ, and the question of whether renters and low-income Australians are being left behind in the EV and electrification transition. Let's get into it. Subaru Australia has made one of the biggest EV moves so far, confirming pricing and specifications for the new Subaru Uncharted, while also cutting prices on the updated Solterra and the incoming Trailseeker. The headline number is this: the 2026 Subaru Uncharted all-wheel drive will start at $59,990 before on-road costs. That makes it Subaru Australia's cheapest electric vehicle so far, sitting underneath the Solterra, which now sits at $61,990 before on-roads, and the Trailseeker, which now starts at $63,990 before on-roads. So Subaru has very deliberately created a neat three-step EV range with about $2,000 between the entry point of each model: Uncharted at just under $60, Solterra at just under $62, and the Trailseeker at just under $64. The Uncharted itself is a compact electric SUV and is part of Subaru's so-called sport electric vehicle range. Like the Solterra and Trailseeker, it is closely related to a Toyota EV. In this case, it is tied to the Toyota CHR+, which is also expected for Australia, though the Subaru is due earlier. Australian versions of the Uncharted will use a 74.7 kWh lithium-ion battery sourced from CATL. Subaru claims a 522 km WLTP range, which is a solid number for this size and price point, although the real-world number will obviously depend on speed, temperature, tyre choice, load and your driving style. Charging is listed at up to 150 kilowatts DC, with a claimed 10 to 80% recharge time of around 30 minutes. It also supports 22 kilowatt AC charging, which is good news for people with access to three-phase AC charging, because not many EVs in this segment give you that. Unlike some overseas market, Australia does not get a cheaper front-drive Uncharted. Every Australian Uncharted is going to be a dual-motor all-wheel drive. Subaru is still calling it symmetrical all-wheel drive, even though, as with most electric all-wheel drive systems, there is no mechanical drive shaft running front to rear. Power is strong. Front motor produces 167 kilowatts with 268 newton meters, while the rear motor produces 88 kilowatts and 168 newton meters of torque. Combined output is 252 kilowatts and 438 newton meters. And Subaru is claiming a 0 to 100 time of around 5 seconds flat. That is not slow. In fact, that moves the Uncharted into a pretty punchy part of the compact electric SUV market. It is not a bargain basement EV pricing, but the performance and range put it more in line with higher grade rivals rather than entry-level models. The Uncharted measures 4,535mm long, 1,870mm wide, 1,625mm tall, sitting on a 2,750mm wheelbase. Ground clearance is 211mm, which is important because Subaru is clearly not trying to make this just another city-focused crossover. It gets dual mode X mode, grip control, downhill assist control, and a multi-terrain monitor. Inside, the Uncharted gets a 14-inch touchscreen, built-in navigation, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, dual wireless phone chargers, a 7-inch digital instrument display, a heated steering wheel, synthetic leather trim, power adjustable and heated front seats, heated outboard seats, a digital rear view mirror, a power tailgate, and a vehicle-to-load capability with a 1500-watt power outlet. It also gets a 10-speaker Harman Kardon sound system, 20-inch alloy wheels, and a pretty comprehensive safety package, including adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, driver attention monitoring, safe exit assist, rear cross traffic alert, surround view monitoring, lane centering, and traffic sign recognition. The Uncharted has not yet been crash tested, so it does not currently have an NCAP rating, although knowing Subaru, I would say it would be pretty much a shoo-in for a 5-star rating. There are also a couple of key options. A panoramic glass sunroof, which will be $1,200, or buyers can get the panoramic roof with two-tone paint for $2,400. Now, the biggest strategic story here is not just the Uncharted, it is Subaru cutting EV pricing again. The Solterra is down by $2,000 across its 2-variant lineup. The Trailseeker, which has not even launched locally yet, is down by $4,000. That means Subaru has already had to sharpen pricing before one of its EVs has reached customers. The Solterra had already been reduced earlier in 2026 after receiving a fairly substantial update, including a larger battery, more range, more power, and refresh technology. The Trailseeker is due to launch in June of 26, and its price cut brings it closer to the Toyota BZ4X Touring Twin. This tells us a few things. First, the Australian EV market is getting more competitive very quickly. Second, Subaru knows it cannot just rely on badge loyalty and an all-wheel drive credibility if its EVs sit too far above the Toyota versions. Third, Toyota is trying to build a more serious EV showroom presence after being very slow to the party. Fact of the matter is that Subaru's first EV effort in Australia, the Solterra, was expensive when it arrived and had a tough job against Tesla, BYD, Hyundai, Kia, and others. The updated pricing is much more realistic, however the market has already moved on. Buyers now expect longer range, fast charging, strong equipment, and sharp pricing. The Uncharted gives Subaru a better chance, especially for buyers who still want a Subaru badge, all-wheel drive, ground clearance, and some light adventure credibility. But at almost 60 grand before on roads, it still needs to be good, because this is not the cheap end of the EV market anymore. Volkswagen has officially taken one of its most important performance badges into the electric age, revealing the ID Polo GT. This is a big symbolic moment. Volkswagen has used the GTI badge for decades on small, practical, front-drive performance cars. Until now, Volkswagen has largely used the GTX badge for sportier electric models. However, with the ID Polo GTI, Volkswagen is clearly saying that GTI still matters, even when the engine is gone. The standard ID Polo GTI uses a front-mounted electric motor, producing 166 kilowatts and 200 newton meters of torque. It is front-wheel drive, however, around 1,540 kilograms, and Volkswagen claims a 0 to 100 km/h time of around 6.8 seconds and a top speed of 175 km/h. To help put the power down, it gets an electronic front differential lock, 19-inch alloy wheels, and 2 3/5-section tyres. It also gets adaptive sports suspension, progressive steering, and a dedicated GTI button on the steering wheel that puts the drive systems, chassis systems, and displays into their sportiest settings. The battery is a 52 kilowatt-hour usable NMC pack with expected WLTP range of up to 424 kilometers. DC charging tops out at 105 kilowatts, so this is not trying to be a monster long-range EV. It is more in the classic hot hatch mold: small, quick enough, nimble, and hopefully fun. There are proper GTI design cues too: red detailing, GTI badges, red calipers, sportier bumpers, more aggressive sidewalls, and a cabin with red stitching and sports seats. Importantly, unlike some of Volkswagen's larger GTX models, the ID Polo GTI gets disc brakes on all 4 corners. There are also reports of a hotter version expected to be called the Polo GTI Club Sport. That version is tipped to make around 210 kilowatts, cutting the 0 to 100 time to under 6.5 seconds. With a more focused chassis tune, lower ride height, wider tracks, and possibly virtual gear shifts, similar in concept to what Hyundai has done with the Ioniq 5N. That matters because one of the big unanswered questions for electric performance cars is driver engagement. EVs are already fast. That part is easy. The hard part is making them feel alive, playful, and interesting once the novelty of instant torque wears off. I didn't think that the novelty wore off, but anyway, Volkswagen is clearly trying to solve that by keeping the GTI identity alive, rather than just building another fast appliance. Australian availability has not been confirmed yet. However, this is exactly the kind of car that could make sense here if the price is right. Small performance cars have become thin on the ground lately, and Australia has a long history with the Polo GTI and the Golf GTI. If Volkswagen Australia can make the ID Polo work locally, the GTI could be a genuinely interesting small EV for people who want something with a bit of personality. The risk, of course, is price. Always comes down to that, really. In Germany, pricing is expected to start at just under 39,000 euros, which converts to roughly low $60,000 range before any Australian-specific costs. Now, that doesn't automatically mean it would land here at that number, but it does tell us this is unlikely to be a cheap city EV. Still, as a sign of where electric hot hatches are going, the ID Polo GTI is very important. It is Volkswagen admitting the future is electric, but also admitting that not everything should feel like a rolling smartphone. BYD's Australian expansion looks set to continue with the Xpeng Ti7, a large SUV that could come here as either a BYD or potentially under the Denza umbrella. It's been reported that the Ti7 is understood to be coming to Australia, and BYD filed Australian trademarks for both the Ti7 and Ti9 in December of 2025. Now, that does not guarantee the final badge strategy, but it does suggest this model is being lined up seriously. The Ti7 is interesting because it sits in a slightly different space to the ladder frame Xpeng B5 and B8 models that are being sold under the Denza brand here in Australia. The Ti7 has a more car-like unibody construction rather than a ladder frame off-road platform. Still a big vehicle. It measures 4,999mm long, 1,995mm wide, and 1,865mm tall, and sits on a 2,920mm wheelbase. That makes it larger than a Hyundai Santa Fe, but it is a 5-seater rather than a 7-seater. That is important for positioning. Now, BYD already has the C-Line 8 as a large 3-row plug-in hybrid SUV in Australia. The Ti7 appears to be more of a large, boxy, premium-ish 5-seat SUV with a bit of a rugged look rather than a family-hauling 7-seater. Powertrain options overseas include both plug-in hybrid and full electric versions. The plug-in hybrid versions use a turbocharged 1.5-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine, making 115 kilowatts and 225 newton meters, paired with either a single front electric motor or dual motors for all-wheel drive. Battery options are 26.6 kilowatt hours or 35.6 kilowatt hours, with CLTC electric range between 135 and 200 kilometers depending on the variant. Those CLTC numbers would come down under the WLTP and then even more so on the real-world Australian driving. However, even allowing for that, this would still be a plug-in hybrid with a very useful electric-only range for daily use. The electric Ti7 is even more interesting. Rear-wheel drive versions use a single 300 kilowatt and 365 newton meter motor with either a 92 kilowatt hour battery offering 675 kilometers CLTC or a 105.7 kilowatt hour battery offering up to 755 kilometers CLTC. The all-wheel drive version adds a 215 kilowatt 310 newton meter front motor and cuts the claim 0 to 100 time to 4.5 seconds. BYD also claims very fast charging on the electric Ti7 with a 10 to 70% DC charge in as little as 5 minutes on compatible infrastructure. As always with ultra-fast claims, the Australian relevance depends heavily on what charging hardware the car gets locally and what chargers owners can actually access. But BYD is clearly pushing hard on charging speed. Inside, the Ti7 gets a 15.6-inch touchscreen, a 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster, and a 26-inch head-up display. Standard equipment overseas includes a panoramic sunroof, leather upholstery, heated and ventilated front seats, a heated steering wheel, and wireless phone charging. For Australia, the big question is not whether BYD has enough products. It is whether BYD has enough showroom space, enough servicing capacity, and a clear enough brand structure. Between BYD and Denza, there are now a lot of SUVs, a lot of plug-in hybrids, and a lot of overlap. However, if the Ti7 comes here with the right price and the right drivetrain, it could give BYD something with a very different flavour. A big, boxy, 5-seat family SUV with either long electric range as a plug-in hybrid or serious full electric performance. But BYD may also be preparing to bring the Atto 2 DMI plug-in hybrid to Australia, and this one could be very important because it has the potential to become the cheapest plug-in hybrid in the country. The regular electric Atto 2 is already on sale in Australia, priced from $31,990 before on-road costs for the dynamic and $35,990 before on roads for the premium. The plug-in hybrid Atto 2 DMI has not officially been confirmed for Australia yet. However, reports suggest that it could be headed here. It has also already been confirmed for right-hand drive markets such as the UK. In the UK, the Atto 2 DMI is front-wheel drive only and is offered in two versions. Both use a naturally aspirated 1.5-litre four-cylinder petrol engine, producing 71 kilowatts and 122 newton meters. The base active version uses a 71 kilowatt-hour LFP battery and has total outputs of 121 kilowatts and 300 newton meters. It can also do 0 to 100 kilometers in 9.1 seconds and has a claimed electric range of 39 kilometers WLTP. The higher boost version uses a larger 18 kilowatt LFP battery, increases total system power to 156 kilowatts and keeps the torque at 300 newton meters, cuts the 0 to 100 time to 7.5 seconds, and lifts electric only range to 89 kilometers WLTP. The second version is the one that looks most interesting for Australia. An 89 kilometer WLTP electric range should be enough for most daily driving, especially for people who can charge at home. It means the petrol engine could sit unused for most commuting, school runs and suburban living, but still be there for the longer trips. The pricing question is where it becomes really interesting. Some analysis suggests that because the UK Atto 2 DMI sits below the electric Atto 2 in that market, the Australian version could potentially start below $30,000 before on-road costs. Now, if BYD pulls that off, it would undercut its own C-Line 5, currently Australia's cheapest plug-in, at $33,990 before on-roads, and it also would sit below the Seal 6 sedan, which starts at $34,990. This would be a very BYD move, bringing a car that competes not only with rivals, but also pressures BYD's own lineup from below. The Atto 2 DMI would also be unusual because the mainstream small SUV market in Australia does not really have another plug-in hybrid after the discontinuation of the Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross plug-in. There are hybrids and there are full EVs, but an affordable plug-in hybrid small SUV could find a real audience. The truth though is that plug-in hybrids only make sense when owners actually plug them in. If people buy them and drive them like regular hybrids with heavy batteries, the benefits shrink dramatically. However, for households that can charge at home and do a lot of short daily trips, an affordable plug-in hybrid can be very practical. If BYD prices this aggressively, the Atto 2 DMI could put serious pressure on petrol hybrid and EV rivals all at once. Xpeng's second Australian model is getting closer, and it's not another SUV. It is the Xpeng X9, a large 7-seat electric people mover. Government approval filings show the X9 is headed for Australia in multiple versions, and Xpeng ANZ has said pricing and specifications for the X9 and updated G6 are expected before the end of June. The X9 will enter a very interesting part of the market. Australia's people mover segment has traditionally been dominated by the Kia Carnival. However, the electric and premium end is suddenly getting really crowded, with vehicles like the Zeekr 009, the Denza D9, and now the Xpeng X9. The X9 measures 5,316mm long, 1,988mm wide, and 1,788mm tall, and it will sit on a 3,160mm wheelbase. So it's a big car, similar in overall size to the Zeekr 009 and the Denza D9. Local filings list standard range and long range grades, with both front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive versions. Front drive models use a single 255 kilowatt motor, while all-wheel drive versions add a rear motor. There is a slight difference in reported combined output depending on source and filing interpretation, with Car Export reporting 355 kilowatts and the Driven listing all-wheel drive variants at 395 kilowatts. Either way, the all-wheel drive X9 will not be short on power. The X9 runs an 800-volt electrical architecture, and this is one of the biggest selling points. Overseas versions use battery packs of around 94.8 kilowatt hours and 110 kilowatt hours, with CLTC range claims between 665 and 750 kilometers. More importantly, Xpeng has made big claims around charging speed. Depending on market and version, the X9 can add a huge amount of range in around 10 to 12 minutes on a suitable ultra-fast charger. Reports suggest peak charging speeds as high as 537 kilowatts overseas, with a 20 to 80% charge in as little as 10 minutes for some versions. Now, in Australia, we need to be careful as always. The car may be capable of very high charging speeds, but you still need chargers that can actually deliver that. Much of Australia's public charging network is not yet built around sustained 500 kilowatt charging. So the X9's charging hardware may be future ready. However, buyers will not always see those best case numbers. The X9 also offers vehicle-to-load output of up to 6 kilowatts, which is pretty damn good. That's enough to make it useful for camping, work sites, appliances, or emergency backup for smaller loads. Inside, the X9 is very much a luxury people mover. It has sliding doors on both sides, a 7-seat layout, leather trim, available Napa leather, second row zero-gravity style seats, massage functionality, a 10.25 instrument display cluster, head-up display, a 17.3-inch central touchscreen, and a large 21.4-inch rear entertainment screen. The Chinese market X9 also uses air suspension and rear wheel steering, although final Australian specifications still need to be confirmed. The interesting thing here is that Xpeng is not entering the people mover market with a budget van. It's going straight into the premium electric MPV space. That could be smart because this type of vehicle is popular in China as a luxury, family and executive transport product, but Australia is still working out whether buyers here want that kind of people mover. The X9 could appeal to large families, airport transfer options, high-end ride-share drivers, and people who want maximum interior comfort without buying a giant SUV. But the pricing will be critical. If it lands too close to luxury European money, it becomes niche. If it undercuts the Zeekr and Denza competition in the right way, it could make the segment much more interesting. Alright, back down to BYD again, and it's moving closer to entering Australia's people mover market with the BYD M9, which has appeared in Australian government approval documents. In China, the vehicle is known as the BYD Xia, but the approval points to the M9 name. It is a 7-seat plug-in hybrid people mover, and it could give BYD a very different kind of family vehicle in Australia. The M9 measures 5,145mm long, 1,970mm wide, and 1,805mm tall, sitting on a 3,045mm wheelbase. That makes it slightly shorter and narrower than a Kia Carnival, but a little bit taller. That comparison matters because the Kia Carnival absolutely dominates Australia's people mover segment. Reports are that the Carnivals claimed 73.4% of Australia's people mover market last year. That's not a segment lead, that's a stranglehold. The difference is that the Carnival is available as a diesel or conventional hybrid, while the BYD M9 is a plug-in hybrid. At the moment, the only plug-in hybrid people mover on sale in Australia is the GAC M8, and that's more of a premium play. Australian approval documents list 2 plug-in hybrid powertrains, both using a turbocharged 1.5-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine. The Chinese market specs show the combustion engine producing 115 kilowatts and 225 newton meters, paired with an electric motor producing 200 kilowatts and 315 newton meters. Battery options in China include a 20.39 kilowatt-hour pack with a 100 kilometer CLTC electric range, and a 36.6 kilowatt-hour pack offering between 203 and 218 kilometers CLTC, depending on the version. DC fast charging rates are listed at 41 kilowatts for the smaller battery, and up to 73 kilowatts for the larger one. Again, CLTC range is optimistic compared with what Australians should expect in mixed real-world use. But even after allowing for that, the larger battery version could cover a lot of family driving on electricity alone. The M9 has a 654 kilogram payload and a 1.5 ton brake towing capacity. Inside, Chinese market versions include a 15.6-inch infotainment screen, 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, 12-speaker sound system, tri-zone climate control, heated and ventilated front seats, and on high grades, massaging seats, first class and second row seating, a rear entertainment screen, and even a 24-speaker Dolby Atmos sound system. The big question is positioning. BYD also has Denza, and Denza already has the D9 to tackle the more premium people mover market. That could leave the BYD M9 to aim more directly at the Kia Carnival, especially if BYD can avoid pricing it like a luxury model. If BYD prices the M9 close enough to the upper end of the Carnival range, it could make a strong argument. Proper family space, sliding door practicality, and enough plug-in hybrid range to do the weekly grind without using much petrol at all. However, BYD must be careful. Australian families are price sensitive, and the Carnival has a reputation, dealer familiarity, and fleet presence that cannot be just dismissed. BYD has momentum, but taking on the Carnival will not be easy. Still, a plug-in hybrid people mover from BYD is exactly the kind of product that could expose how limited some legacy lineups really are. BYD is not just looking at family buyers, the brand also appears to be preparing a return to the Australian van market with the BYD V9, a huge electric delivery van that has appeared in Australian government certification documents. This is not a small van. The Australian approval document points to a vehicle measuring 6,995mm long, 2,096mm wide, and 2,780mm tall, with a 4,550mm wheelbase. That makes it longer than even the long wheelbase Mercedes-Benz E-Sprinter. In other words, this is a proper full-size commercial van, not a city delivery runabout. The Australian-bound V9 is listed with a single 150 kilowatt rear-mounted electric motor, a 1,330 kilogram payload, and 1,500 kilogram braked towing capacity. Both 2-seat and 3-seat configurations are listed. Battery capacity is not confirmed in the Australian approval documents. However, the vehicle is related to the BYD E-Valley shown in Europe. Overseas variants are offered with 80.64 kWh and 126 kWh LFP batteries, with AC charging up to 22 kilowatts and DC charging up to 188 kilowatts. WLTP range overseas is listed between 220 and 250 kilometers depending on the version. That range figure is where the hard commercial reality comes in. For some fleet operators, 220 to 250 kilometers is enough, especially for predictable metro routes with depot charging. For others, it will not be. The vans are not bought for brochure numbers, they are bought for payload, uptime, route reliability, cost, and charging logistics. Cargo volume overseas is listed at up to 17.9 cubic meters for the long wheelbase version, which is serious carrying capacity. And for businesses that can charge overnight at depots, the lower running costs and reduced maintenance of an electric van can make a lot of sense. The V9 would take on the Ford E-Transit, the Mercedes-Benz E-Sprinter, and a Renault Master E-Tech, along with electric vans from LDV and other emerging brands. This also marks a return of sorts for BYD in Australia with its vans. BYD's earlier T3 electric van was imported in limited numbers under its previous distributor arrangement, but it never really became a mainstream commercial product here. The V9 is different. BYD is now a much larger force in Australia with a far larger customer base, stronger brand reputation, and a growing dealer network. If it can back the V9 with proper fleet support, servicing, parts availability, and competitive pricing, this could be the kind of product that gets fleet managers paying attention. But again, price will be everything. It's been suggested that the V9 could land closer to $80,000, though BYD has not confirmed local pricing. At that sort of money, it needs to stack up on the total cost of ownership, not just EV appeal. For tradies and fleet buyers, the questions are simple. Can it do the route? Can it carry the load? Can it charge reliably and save money over the ownership cycle? If the answer is yes, the V9 could be a significant commercial EV addition. Staying with vans, and Renault has confirmed Australian pricing for the new generation Master van, including the electric Master E-Tech, which will arrive later in 2026. Diesel versions launch first from June of 26, priced from $55,990 before on roads. The electric Master E-Tech starts from $77,990 for the mid-wheelbase standard roof version, while the long wheelbase standard roof version is $79,990 before on roads. The Master E-Tech uses a front-mounted electric motor producing 105 kilowatts and 300 newton meters, powered by an 87 kilowatt-hour battery. Renault claims the WLTP driving range of up to 409 kilometers, which is a strong number for a large electric van. DC fast charging peaks at 130 kilowatts, with a claimed 15 to 80% recharge time of 38 minutes. Brake towing capacity is 2,000 kilograms, with unbraked towing at 750 kilograms. Payload is where the EV trade-off will show up. The Electric Master offers payload between 1,084 and 1,164 kilograms, depending on its configuration. Diesel versions offer significantly higher payload, between roughly 1,811 and 1,923 kilograms. This is the reality of electric vans right now. The battery gives you lower running costs and zero tailpipe emissions, but it also eats into payload. For fleets, this is not a small issue. If the van is cubing out before it weighs out, it may not matter much. If the business is carrying heavy tools, parts, freight or equipment, it absolutely will matter. The new Master has been redesigned with better aerodynamics and a more modern cabin. Standard equipment includes a 3-seat layout, steel bulkhead with window, sliding side door, rear barn doors, automatic headlights, rain sensing wipers, a 10-inch touchscreen, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, 2 USB-C ports, blind spot monitoring, lane keep assist, rear parking sensors, and a reversing camera. E-Tech models also get Google integrated services. The Master also received a platinum rating from Euro NCAP for its active safety and driver assist technology. Renault's challenge is that the electric van market is becoming more crowded. The Master E-Tech is cheaper than the Ford e-Transit and the Mercedes-Benz e-Sprinter, and it offers strong claimed range, but it will also need to compete with cheaper Chinese alternatives and whatever BYD brings with the V9. Still, sub $80,000 pricing for a large electric van with more than 400 kilometers of claimed WLTP range is a meaningful step. For businesses with predictable routes and depot charging, this is the kind of product that could finally start making electric vans feel less experimental. Mercedes-Benz has confirmed the new CLA range for Australia, including 2 fully electric variants. The new CLA lineup will include 3 mild hybrids and 2 EVs. And for us, the EVs are the focus. The CLA 200 electric priced from $72,200 before on roads, and the CLA 350 4MATIC electric priced from $91,300 before on roads. The CLA 200 electric uses a 58 kilowatt-hour LFP battery and a single rear motor producing 165 kilowatts and 335 newton meters. Mercedes claims 470 kilometers WLTP range and a 0 to 100 time of 7.5 seconds. The CLA 350 4MATIC electric uses an 85 kilowatt-hour battery, dual motors, and produces 260 kilowatts and 515 newton meters. It also cuts the 0 to 100 time to 4.9 seconds and has a claimed range of 633 kilometers WLTP. Both electric versions use an 800-volt architecture and support DC fast charging at up to 320 kilowatts. Importantly, Mercedes says a DC converter will be standard in Australia, meaning the CLA EVs can also use 400-volt chargers. That matters because Australia's charging network is mixed. Some buyers are rightfully nervous about ultra-modern 800-volt EVs that do not play nicely with older or lower voltage chargers. Including the converter locally is the right call. The new CLA has a very slippery design with a claimed drag coefficient of 0.21, which helps explain the efficiency figures. The CLA 200 electric is listed at 14.4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and the CLA 350 4MATIC gets 14.9 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which is fantastic. Inside, the CLA gets Mercedes' latest digital cabin, including the MBUX Superscreen concept, MBOS software, over-the-air update capability, wireless charging, ambient lighting, heated front seats, and a panoramic glass sunroof as standard across the range. Mercedes-Benz Australia's own preview page says the electric CLA launches on the 21st of May, so it's not far off promise, it's pretty much here. What makes this interesting for Australia is that Mercedes is not treating the EV version as some distant halo model. The electric CLA 200 sits only a few $1,000s above the CLA 200 mild hybrid and under the CLA 220 4MATIC mild hybrid. That could make the electric version a very serious option for buyers in this segment. The CLA 350 4MATIC electric, meanwhile, is not cheap, but it brings strong performance and a long range. A claimed 663 kilometers WLT figure is exactly the kind of number that helps reduce range anxiety for premium buyers who do highway driving. The challenge for Mercedes is that Tesla, Polestar, BMW, Hyundai Kia, and the Chinese luxury brands are all moving quickly. But the CLA Electric gives Mercedes something it has badly needed: a relatively compact premium EV with proper range, fast charging, and mainstream showroom appeal. Audi is evaluating the upcoming A2 e-tron for Australia. This could be a very important model if it gets the green light. The A2 e-tron has not been fully revealed yet. However, Audi has confirmed globally that a compact EV is coming, and local representatives have mentioned that the product is being evaluated for Australia. Audi's local logic is pretty simple. Smaller EVs are growing, fuel prices remain a pressure point, and evaded leasing plus fringe benefits tax savings have made certain electric cars much more attractive to Australian buyers. Audi specifically pointed to interest in electrified products that sit under the luxury car tax threshold and can take advantage of incentives or FBT savings. It is a very Australian market way to look at it, and it is probably the right one. The A2 name also has history. The original A2 was built from 1999 to 2005 and was famous for its lightweight aluminium construction and a very low fuel consumption. It was never sold in Australia, and it was probably too weird and too expensive for its time, but it developed a cult following. The new A2 e-tron is expected to use Volkswagen Group's MEB platform, shared with vehicles like the Cupra Born and the Volkswagen ID3. That means a wide spread of battery and motor options is possible. The ID3, for example, offers usable battery capacity from around 45 to 79 kilowatt hours overseas, with range from about 330 to 670 kilometers depending on the version. None of that confirms what Audi would offer here, but it gives us a rough idea of what the platform can handle. The A2 e-tron is due to be unveiled in the final month of 2026. If it comes to Australia, it would likely sit as Audi's entry-level EV under larger and more expensive electric SUVs and sedans. This is exactly the sort of car a premium brand needs if they want EVs to move beyond early adopters and high-income buyers. Not everybody wants a giant SUV. Plenty of people want a smaller, premium EV that's easy to park, efficient, well-built, and not priced like a flagship. But Audi will need to be realistic on price. A compact EV cannot just be small but expensive and expect it to succeed. If the A2 e-tron lands at a sensible number and keeps useful range and good equipment, it could be a good fit for Australia's premium small car buyers. Alright, we've spoken about the Lexus TZ a couple of times before, but there's a fresh Australian angle for now. There are reports out there that the 3-row electric SUV has been announced for right-hand drive markets, which makes it much more relevant and much more expected now for Australia. The Lexus TZ is a large 3-row electric SUV designed to take on vehicles like the Kia EV9 and the Volvo EX90. It measures 5,100mm long, 1,990mm wide, and 1,705mm tall, sitting on a 3,050mm wheelbase. It uses a 6-seat 2+2+2 layout with the second row treated as the luxury zone. Those seats get features such as heating, ventilation, and Ottoman-style rear leg rests. Up front, the cabin uses a 14.5-inch infotainment touchscreen and a 12.3-inch digital instrument display, with Lexus also using materials such as forged bamboo and recycled aluminium. For now, there is one powertrain, a dual-motor all-wheel drive setup producing 300 kilowatts, paired with a 95.8 kilowatt-hour battery. Lexus claims 0 to 100 in 5.4 seconds and up to 530 kilometers a WLTP range. Charging is a slight weak point compared with some rivals. The TZ uses a 400-volt architecture with DC charging capped at about 150 kilowatts and a claimed 10 to 80% charge time of 35 minutes. That's not bad in isolation, but it trails the fastest 800-volt rivals. Boot space is limited at 290 litres with all 6 seats in place, expanding to 2,107 litres with the second and the third row folded. Now, no Australian launch has officially been confirmed. However, right-hand drive production changes the conversation completely. Lexus Australia already had a strong SUV customer base, and a large 3-row EV would make sense as a flagship family model if pricing and supply worked. The key question is whether Lexus can position it against the Kia EV9 and the Volvo EX90 without overpricing it. Lexus buyers value refinement and reliability. However, the EV space is much more spec-sensitive. Range, charging speed, interior packaging, and price all get compared very closely. The TZ looks like a credible luxury family EV, But the 400-volt charging system means Lexus will need to win on comfort, build quality, equipment and ownership experience, not just raw charging speed. Alright, there were two policy and access stories worth joining together this week. First, the Electric Vehicle Council has called for the Albanese government to do more to help lower-income Australians switch to EVs. The EVC welcomed the decision to keep the electric car discount in full until April 27, before gradually phasing down the FBT exemption for more expensive EVs, and it also welcomed the decision to defer an EV road user charge. However, the council argues that more direct support is needed for lower-income households, especially those stuck in older, less efficient petrol and diesel vehicles. Now that point matters. EV incentives often help people who are already in a position to buy a new car or access an novated lease. Those people can absolutely benefit from lower running costs. However, the households getting hit hardest by petrol prices are often the least able to buy a new EV in the first place. The EVC has pointed to fuel and servicing savings. However, the upfront price barrier remains real. It is not enough for EVs to be cheaper to run if people cannot get into them in the first place. And the second story comes from New South Wales, where the government is looking at minimum energy efficiency standards for rental properties. ABC News reported on Rewiring Australia's push for renters to be included in the electrification future, including portable solar, efficient appliances, and eventually easier to access vehicle-to-home or vehicle-to-grid style technology. The article highlighted a Wollongong renter using portable solar panels, batteries, an induction cooktop, efficient lighting, and a heat pump hot water system to reduce energy bills. Rewiring Australia is arguing that rental homes are significantly less energy efficient than owner-occupied homes, especially in low-income and regional areas. The New South Wales government says measures like insulation could cut bills by up to $750 a year. The really interesting EV angle is bidirectional charging. Rewiring Australia wants renters to eventually have access to a dedicated plug that will allow portable, high-power, bidirectional charging equipment, so tenants could use an EV battery to help power a home without permanently hardwiring equipment they cannot take with them. That is a big idea and will need careful regulation, safety standards and electrical rules, but it points to where the market is going. EVs are not just transport anymore, they are batteries on wheels. For homeowners with solar, a garage and control over the electrical setup, the benefits of that are easier to access. For renters, apartment dwellers and people without off-street parking, it is much harder. That is the next equity challenge. It's not just can people afford the car, it is can they charge it, can they access cheap charging, can they use flexible tariffs, can they benefit from solar, and can they use the battery in the car to reduce household bills? If Australia wants the EV transition to be broad, not just concentrated among high-income homeowners, these are the details that matter. And finally, I wanted to share with you an interesting market analysis piece that I read online from Cars Guide, and it raised an interesting point. Legacy brands may now be using China's own playbook back at them. For years, global car companies entered China through joint ventures, bringing engineering knowledge, production systems, and brand reliability. Chinese brands learned quickly, scaled quickly, and are now among the most competitive EV and plug-in hybrid manufacturers in the world. Now we are seeing the reverse pattern. Established brands are using Chinese platforms, Chinese manufacturing partnerships, and Chinese EV development speed to bring more competitive electrified cars to global markets. Nissan is leaning heavily on its Dongfeng relationship, including the Frontier Pro plug-in hybrid and related SUV products. Mazda has delayed its first fully in-house EV and is instead working with Changan on models like the Mazda 6e and the CX-6e, both of which are relevant for Australia. Hyundai's Alexio comes through Beijing Hyundai, and the Kia EV5 is built in China through Kia's local partnership structure. This is not automatically bad. In fact, for Australian buyers, it could be good if it means more affordable, better equipped EVs and plug-in hybrids wearing familiar badges. But it does create a very different market. The old idea that Chinese brands were the cheap challengers and legacy brands were the established premium players, it's breaking down. Now the legacy brands may use Chinese manufacturing and platforms to fight Chinese brands on price, while Chinese brands are moving up market with premium technology, big batteries and luxury interiors. For Australia, the result is likely to be more competition, more choice and more pressure on pricing. We're already seeing it. Subaru has cut EV pricing. BYD is launching models at a rapid pace. Renault is trying to make electric vans more attainable. Mercedes is bringing electric CLA models into the core lineup. Audi's looking at smaller EVs. Volkswagen is trying to keep the fun alive with its ID Polo GTI. The market is moving really fast, and the winners will not simply be the brands with the longest history or the biggest advertising budget. The winners will be the brands that bring the right cars at the right price with the right range, charging, software, warranty, and support. That's good news for buyers, and it also means some brands are going to get exposed very quickly if they do not get their backsides into gear. And that is a wrap on episode 56 of Plugged In Australia. I think the big theme today is choice. Subaru is finally starting to build a proper EV lineup. BYD is preparing to expand into almost every corner of the market. Xpeng and Denza are pushing electric people movers. And the policy debate is shifting from just how do we sell more EVs to who actually gets access to the benefits. As always, the EV transition in Australia is not perfect. It's not evenly distributed, but the pace of change is really picking up. As always, thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. Any feedback, any ideas or suggestions for special episodes, info@pluggedinaustralia.com.au. Until the next time, stay plugged in and stay charged. Ci vediamo.